Welcome back to Power and Politics. Proposed changes to the environmental review process are causing a lot of controversy today. The government insists the move will cut red tape by peeling away unnecessary layers of duplication and imposing time limits on the approvals process. So we had Joe Oliver on explaining that, the Minister of Natural Resources, earlier in the program. Is it a sensible plan to keep job-creating projects on track, or is the government putting the environment at risk by rushing the process and handing over more oversight powers to the provinces? Well, we've got reaction now from one of Canada's leading environmental experts. Joining me now is David Suzuki. David Suzuki, the federal government says they want a one-review process. They only want to review major projects. How do you view this? They're calling it a streamlining of the process. What's your view?
Well, you know, my attitude has always been that if something like the tar sands in Alberta the government wants to develop it, I'm fine with that. If they want to dig it up, burn it, do whatever they want, spew the stuff into the atmosphere, I'm absolutely fine. Let the Albertans do that, as long as whatever they do stays within Alberta's boundaries. You know, I don't want them fooling around with my air or my water. Just keep it within Alberta. It's absurd to talk about single review processes that are confined to provinces. Look at what's happening in the Gulf of St. Lawrence right now. Newfoundland is a petroleum province. They want to drill right in the Gulf. There are 5 provinces bounding the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And the fishing communities around the Gulf do not want the risk of oil. So how are the provinces going to duke it out? We need a federal jurisdiction to look at that.
Well, they say this, quote, I'll quote the minister today, who was on this program. It's counterproductive to have the federal and provincial governments completing separate reviews for the same project. We want to move to a one project, one review process as long as they meet the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. What's wrong with that?
I think that it should be done at the federal level then and forget about the provincial level. These issues are transboundary. They're not localized to a single province. And, you know, we saw what happened in British Columbia. The British Columbia government approved a mining development that would poison all of Fish Lake in the interior here. The province approved it. Mr. Prentice, when he was Minister of the Environment, looked it over, assessed it, and said, no, I just don't think we can do that, and he turned it down. We need that kind of perspective that comes from the federal level. Now, all of it seems to be driven by the demand to be more efficient. More efficient at what? It's all driven by a corporate agenda to develop the hell out of everything in Canada. I just want to remind your viewers, this is the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the environmental movement. In 1962, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, and at that time there wasn't a Department of the Environment in any government on the planet. 30 years later, we had Rio in 1992, and Rio was meant to signal that from that point on, we couldn't have economic development without considering the environment.
But here's what they say.
We're going backwards.
Well, he says they're not. I'll read you what
Baloney.
he says.
Baloney. The government has indicated right from the time it came into power that the environment was a pain in the neck, it was an impediment. They have never taken the environment.
He's under Canada's Economic Action Plan. I want your thoughts on this. Quote, I'm quoting Joe Oliver, we'll provide $35 million over 2 years to enhance marine safety, $13.5 million to strengthen pipeline safety, regulations to strengthen tanker safety regime. And we'll also increase the number of annual oil and gas pipeline inspections from 100 to 150 and double the number of annual comprehensive audits from 3 to 6 to identify pipeline safety. They say they're making progress there.
That's not progress to say we're going to commit to doing these kinds of projects to improve the technology. It's like saying, you know, Mr. Harper's commitment in terms of the environment has been billions of dollars to a loony idea of carbon capture and sequestration. This is where all the money is, not into renewable energy, alternative energy, but into this idea that we're going to have technology solve it. Don't tell me you're going to be able to have pipelines that do not leak. The point is, these technologies, none of them is foolproof. What is a foolproof technology? A technology free of fools. Guess what? We are all a part of the problem with these technologies. There's always going to be accidents, and the First Nations along the coast of British Columbia are telling us that there are things more important than money. Their culture, their history will be at risk if there are spills in the ocean.
I'll tell you, the minister, on that point, I'm quoting him, he said, Aboriginal groups have expressed concerns about consultation fatigue and the need to simplify the consultation process for project reviews.
But if you look at what the Aboriginal people are saying right now, they're saying this consultation process is a joke. You have an assessment committee when the Prime Minister is telling them that he wants that pipeline through. The Aboriginal people are not stupid. They can see that this is a foregone decision. What kind of an assessment, objective assessment is it when the Prime Minister of Canada tells you what he wants done? We're all seen as an impediment because the concerns being raised, either by First Nations or by environmentalists, are seen as obstructionist. We're seen as extremists.
He says, I want to get your view on this timeline. They cite these two things. The Areva Resources project for a uranium mine in northern Saskatchewan that had a 19-month delay to get environmental assessment, and the Jocelyn North Mine project, an oil sands mine in Alberta. They say it was tied up for 6 years. And now he says to fix all that, we're going to have 24 months of a panel review, 18 months for the National Energy Board hearings, and 12 for the standard environmental assessments. Now, my question is that enough time, or is there what amount of time is acceptable for a review process?
The problem, Evan, is that we don't know enough in a lot of these issues. We had all kinds of supposed government assessment of the impact of the tar sands on the water, and they said everything was fine. Whatever was in the water was naturally occurring. And then you finally had a scientist who blew the whistle and forced the feds then to backtrack and say, okay, we're going to set up a blue ribbon panel and do the right work. The reality is the fossil fuel industry is very, very powerful, and they want to get on with it, and there's all kinds of confusion that's coming from the claims, and governments that want that development are going to take what the industry says. It's going to take time to find out seriously what will be the impact and what will be the long-term consequences.
Now, the government is...
That's going to take time.
But the government is characterizing, saying we need economic development, so they want to streamline. And they say, I'm just going to say, they said less duplication in the reviewing process. And one of the examples they show about why it needs streamlining, I just read it to you because I want to get your reaction. They say the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency was required to conduct an environmental assessment of a maple syrup operation, and then the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada carried out an assessment for the construction of a blueberry washing facility. Hardly threats to the environment. This is what they're citing as the problem.
This is all government manipulation to get us all worked up. The important thing is this: Canadians haven't had a chance to decide whether the future of Canada is to be based on a single giant industry. We all know the impact of the Dutch discovery of oil in the North Sea. They put all of the eggs of North Sea oil into their basket, and guess what? The manufacturing sector just crashed. Look at what's happening now. The government is saying, well, we've got to develop the tar sands, and look, Ontario, you've had your day now. Forget, Ontario's the heart of our manufacturing. We don't want the Dutch disease to come to Canada with all of the emphasis on a single resource. Then the big question is, what about the long-term impacts of the development here? This is a one-time only resource. Is it our right to go in and exploit it and deprive future generations of having that opportunity? I mean, there are big questions at issue here, it seems to me, that aren't being discussed.
I got 30 seconds with you here. The government is suggesting that only directly affected parties will have standing at a review process. I don't know who defines that. What do you make of that?
Well, I say, as long as there's a segment of society that doesn't breathe air or drink water, then I guess, yeah, there will be a directly affected group of people. It's absurd to say that someone who's in British Columbia and is not involved economically with the tar sands doesn't have a right to express an opinion. It affects us. Because these issues are transboundary. They're global, in fact.
David Suzuki, is this about streamlining the efficiencies, or is this, in your mind, an attack on the environment?
Well, of course. It's that the environment and the environmentalists are regarded as an impediment. And I think that is throwing out 50 years of development and awareness of the importance of the environment on our lives. The environment is everything. It keeps us alive, and I'm absolutely convinced that Canadians overwhelmingly want strong environmental legislation and control.
All right, I got to leave it there. David Suzuki, I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
See you again.